Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barry Louise Switson, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? Me is a New York Times best-selling author. She has sold over 60 million copies of her books. What I'm talking about is a billion-dollar niche market. And with me is Debbie Macomber. Debbie, thank you so much for joining me today. Share with us how you got started in this market.
Well, I was a young housewife and mother with 4 babies, and I'd always dreamed of being a writer. But it was a dream I never shared with anybody, Barry, because I knew that the minute I did, people would say, well, you didn't get good grades in English. You're a creative speller. You don't have any background. I married as a teenager, and so I just kind of stuffed that dream away, thinking, oh, I can't do that. There is no way. And then I had a cousin who died, and that was 1978. And it was such a shattering emotional experience. And it was as if God was saying to me, you cannot shove your dreams into the future. Life holds no guarantees. So we rented a typewriter, put it on the kitchen table, moved it at mealtime, and the super mom became the struggling young writer.
The reason you were not doing so well in English was because, I understand it, you're dyslexic.
When I was going to school back in the 50s, they didn't have a word for it then. They didn't understand why some children had a more difficult time learning how to read. They called it word blindness.
What exactly is it?
Your mind confuses words. I mean, it still does to a certain extent. I'll confuse words, just, such. Those two just kind of interchange in my mind. Why those two? I don't know. When I'm writing, I will be going along, I will often just delete words in the middle of a sentence. That's why it's so important to have everything proofread before I ever let my publisher see it.
And the thing is that you went on to do something with your life because you had a message.
I certainly believe I do. You know, I want people to read my books, women to read my books. I want them to meet somebody that's just like they are, that's confronted with real life problems, and then who faces those problems with dignity and with honor, and let the reader know they can do the same and to make good choices in their lives.
Now, once you decided to write your first novel,
okay,
it took you 5 years before you were really published. What happened in that interim?
Oh my goodness. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. I mean, I've given birth to 4 children, and labor was nothing compared to this. It was, there were times when I would send off a manuscript, I joke and I say, it hit me in the back of the head on the way home from the post office. That is how fast it got rejected. But you know, I was not just gently tapping against that door of opportunity. I was putting the full force of my weight, my determination, my will, everything. About 2.5 years into this, and I had not brought 1 penny's income into our family. And we hit like a crisis where we could not pay the bills anymore. My husband was a construction electrician and didn't always have construction work in Seattle. So he said, honey, I'm so sorry. You're just going to have to get a job. And I knew that kiss this dream goodbye. I wasn't going to be able to do it. I mean, I couldn't be the writer, the mom, and work 40 hours a week. And, you know, I went to bed. I circled 3 jobs I was going to apply for the next day, but I didn't want to do them. I knew it was over. And Wayne woke up in the middle of the night and he said, are you asleep? And I said, no, I've been up all night. And he says, well, what's wrong? And I said, honey, you know, I really think I could have made it. I really think I could have sold a book. And he didn't say anything for a long time. And he said, well, all right, honey, go for it. Go for it. Now, Barry, I wish I could.
That's encouragement.
Oh, wonderful encouragement. And not everybody has that kind of encouragement. I feel very blessed to have the husband I do. And, you know, I wish I could say, you know, just a month later I sold. But it was another 2.5 years before I sold.
How long did it take you to write this particular first novel?
The first book was a real learning experience. I did what I call a 4-book apprenticeship. I wrote 4 books all the way through. And the first book, of course, was the hardest. My gift is storytelling ability. And the writing part's hard for me. It's always hard for me because words just get in the way of the story. I want to tell that story. And so I didn't know how to write a book. You know, I didn't spell. I was still creative speller, still, you know, struggling with that. So when I started, I thought I would put my hands on the keys and it's just magic. The brain would, I just close my eyes and it would come, and it didn't. And I wanted this so badly. I didn't know what to do. And what I did was probably one of the smartest things I could have done. I took 4 books that I had read over and over again, and I loved those books. There was something in those books that, whatever it was, I could go back and enjoy them as much the second and third time as I did the first.
Yeah.
Yes, whatever it was, I wanted that. So I went through and dissected them, just like I had in biology class. I went through them chapter by chapter. And in the process, I learned about how to open a chapter, how to close a chapter, pacing, characterization, plotting, just by doing those 4 books. And then I sat down to write my first book. So that first book took me almost 9 months to write.
So it was like, did you rewrite the book, your first novel, after you dissected the 4 books?
I sat down and wrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it again, and then I thought, okay, this is good as I can do. You know, so I had, besides, you know, I'm like too many ideas are popping up. I didn't want to waste all my time on one story. So I started with the second and wrote that book and sent it off, and then the third and sent it off, and then the fourth and sent it off. And
did you send it to the same publisher, or did you
I sent it to every publisher who I could find an address for.
Oh, well, how many books have you actually written?
You know, I've stopped counting, but I know it's over 100.
Over 100?
Over 100.
Oh my God, it's amazing for me to write a letter, let alone over 100 books.
Well, you know, there were shorter books in the category lines. I used to say they had the lifespan of cottage cheese. They would be on the shelf for a month and then they were gone. And now those same books are being republished, and I have a much wider and much bigger audience, and they're the books that are making the Times list.
Now, how did you feel when you first made the New York Times list?
Oh my goodness. What an incredible day that was. I was just back from swimming and the phone rings and it's my agent. And she said, "Did you hear?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You made the Times list." And I just burst into tears. It had been such a goal for me. You know, it was just wonderful. Just wonderful.
What happened after you made the Times list?
Well, I was the first Mira author to make the Times list with an original title. So it was a celebration for the whole company. So they flew me to New York to meet with big buyers, and they flew me up, and the whole company had a party.
I read one of your books, Between Friends, and I got to the end, and it was like very touching. I started crying.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. I love it when I make people cry.
Because it was about a woman, basically, who gets breast cancer, and it's so relevant today. It was just how people reacted between friends for so many years. It was a beautiful story. How would you define your success factor?
Probably a number of factors. I don't think it's any one thing. I think it's God-given talent. I think it's determination and drive, ambition in a good way. I think it's caring about my readers and responding to them. I think it's being a good businesswoman. Those are just the things that come off the top of my head.
You might have used for basis of your stories.
I think Paul, from the Bible, dynamite personality, strong personality. Certainly he had drive and ambition. I'm writing a speech for a talk that I'm giving, and I was looking at Galatians in the chapter 6, and in the Eugene Peterson message it says, and this is Paul writing, "Live creatively. Make the most of the talent God has given you. Don't compare yourself with others. Don't be impressed with yourself. Make the most of what you have.
What advice would you have to budding authors?
Well, first of all, you've got to have a lot more than talent in this business. Talent is everywhere. I have met writers that have more talent than I will ever possess. But there's so many other factors that go into being a successful writer.
For example?
Determination. This is the hardest thing I ever did, breaking in. It is not any easier now than it was when I broke in. Phyllis Whitney said it 50 years ago, and it's still true. There's never been an easy time to sell a book. So you've got to have determination. You've got to have the will to do this. You have got to want this more than you have ever wanted anything in your life.
How did you publicize yourself at the beginning?
I grassroots level, when my first book was published, I got my first fan letter. I had never written an author. I liked that. You know, I liked reading this. So I kept everybody's name and address, and when I would have a book out, I would just send them a little note saying, my next book's coming out, I think you'll like it, this is what it's about. And that little, starting off, my first list was just a few hundred names, now it's up to 35,000. And every single person on that list has either met me, written to me, or signed in my guest book on my website.
When you were selling your first book, and you were negotiating your contract, how did they come up with a price to give you, or did you know a price that you wanted for your book?
Oh, heavens, no. If they'd have said, if you want to sell your first book, you have to go stand on your head in the middle of the street and wave at your friends, I would have done it. You know, I wanted it that bad. I said 4 words. The editor called, and I said, hello. Yes. Thank you. Goodbye. And the next day, I called back and said, did somebody really call me, or did I dream that? Because I just couldn't believe it really happened. So, you know, they offered me, and I would have accepted anything. And I was, yeah, you know, I'm a little more business savvy than that. But at the time, I was just so grateful to have gotten an offer of a contract. Now I would tell anybody, you know, if somebody calls to make an offer, say, I'm very excited about this, I need to talk to my agent, I'll have them get back to you. And then I would immediately call somebody and say, you know, get the list of agents, interview agents, and have whoever I pick call back.
What advice would you like to leave the audience with?
I would like the audience to know that it's important to give back. You know, the books that I write give something to them. It gives them hope. It gives them encouragement. And I'm very fortunate to write for a publisher that feels very strongly about helping women achieve their dreams. I want to make a difference in my world, and I think everybody can in one way or another.
Debbie, thank you so much.
Oh, Barry, thank you. It was great.
Wonderful. And thank you. Are you writing away and getting your book sold?